RAW or JPEG? JPEG or RAW? Hey, what's up? My name is Arthur Weiner, and today we're going to discuss one of the most relevant topics for photographers. Just as once we compared PNG and JPEG, today we're going to compare the most popular format for photographers. What's the difference between them? Why is it advised to use RAW, and why in some cases it can be dangerous to use RAW format? Sit back, relax. We're about to begin. Let's start with the basics. RAW files store all the information that hits your camera's sensor, the amount of light, the level of shadows, the saturation of each possible color, white balance, and even the color profile. When it comes to JPEGs, everything is much simpler here. The advantage is the file size, and in fact the use of this very compression means that the whole range of information about the file is narrowed down to the number of pixels and its color. So to put it simply, a RAW photo is an unprocessed image, and JPEG, accordingly, is a processed image. Now, let's talk about the technical specs of JPEG files. A JPEG is always an 8-bit image. This means that a JPEG file contains 256 shades of red, green, and blue. That adds up to 16 million colors, which is a pretty impressive value. But RAW images can be both 12-bit and 14-bit, and that's more than 4,000 shades of each of the aforementioned colors, which is 68 billion colors if we're talking about 12-bit images. If your camera produces a 14-bit RAW image, ready? More than 4 trillion colors would be stored in a single image. And as I said before, RAW files have a higher dynamic range, which means you can easily recover some lost details if you underexposed or overexposed a photo, for example. We'll look at some examples later, but for now let's talk about another advantage of the RAW format. Unlike JPEGs, RAWs do not sharpen the image using software. This means that you can sharpen it in any of the most convenient ways. And the most important advantage is for those who care about the copyright of the image. Only with RAW photos you can prove that this photo was taken by you because of the metadata that is stored in the images. And now let's compare this incredible RAW format with the good old JPEG format. Let's head to the photo editor. Let's start with an underexposed image, because this is a great example where you can clearly see the advantage. Let's open the JPEG. The first obvious solution would be to bring up the darker tones in the photo, and we can do that, but there is a sense that the photo is defective. The information in the shadows shows up, of course, but not in the same way as in the case of RAW. Identical settings in the program, however, what a difference. And this is the main difference between the two formats. And for the sake of purity of the experiment, let's move on to an overexposed photo and see how we can recover the highlighted areas of the photo. Let's open the RAW file and drop down the highlights. If that's not enough, you can also bring down the whites. And it seems to be some kind of magic. Let's do the same with JPEG, and no, unfortunately, it doesn't work. Again, it's no good at all. Now, let's pretend that we missed the white balance. Let's try to restore it as well. Yes, it works here too. RAW handles this task easily, while JPEG seems to tint the image in one way or another. Yeah, it's possible to correct the balance, but in the case of JPEG, it's clearly worse than with the RAW format. And I could show you more examples, but I think you've got it all figured out. And you can easily edit a RAW photo in the PhotoWorks. Simply open an underexposed or overexposed photo, select a ready-made processing preset, or manually adjust the highlights, whites, shadows, cropping, curves, working with presets, built-in filters. PhotoWorks has it all, plus retouching with artificial intelligence. This friendly and simple to use photo editor has countless useful tools and instruments for precise image correction. By clicking the link in the description, you can download this photo editor with a 5-day free trial, or you can purchase a full version of PhotoWorks with 60% discount using the same link. Download PhotoWorks, take your photos to the next level, and we are moving on. So let's summarize the pros and cons of two formats. The first is the amount of information that is stored in one file. JPEG, the photo processed by your camera, RAW, the original, which you can finalize in a photo editor. RAW format has practically no disadvantages. It's hard to note anything. I'm completely satisfied with this format, but there are opinions of other photographers which should should not be left out. For some, the disadvantage is the size of the files. They say raw images can weigh many times and sometimes dozens of times more. And yeah, this is true, but nowadays SSDs are very cheap, so I personally don't see the point of saving space at the cost of processing capabilities. But at the same time, the size of the files causes the speed of their transfer, but this is also not critical, especially given the further processing. And speaking of processing, one more disadvantage is also highlighted by conservative photographers. Those who don't like retouching, color correcting, etc., referring to the fact that raw photos will take longer to process. But I love processing, and I think you do too. So the disadvantages of RAW over JPEG are very delicate and subjective. And that's it for today. Yeah, it's shorter than usual, but I don't see the point in stretching it out. You guys are smart, you catch everything on the fly. What do you prefer to use when shooting? Maybe RAW plus JPEG? Tell us about that in the comments, and we won't say goodbye to you. See you in more exciting bits.